Welcome. It has just gone 7 p.m, non-daylight saving time, Wednesday the 5th of October. And you are watching episode 62 of Regional Wrap. Regional Wrap, providing an insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, from lockdowns to lockout, are my guests, Honourable Jeff Bourman, MLA for Eastern Victoria region, and the candidate for the Northern region, Josh Knight. Sorry. Both are endorsed members of the Shooters and Fishers and Farmers Party. Before entering Parliament in 2015, Jeff worked in many jobs, including administrator, cleaner, security guard, administration officer, police officer, and photographer. Jeff's vision for Victoria's future is a state that is both prosperous and safe, where only the guilty are punished. In the area of public policy he is most passionate about is law and order. Jeff's interest in this area stemmed from his insights gained as a police officer. Josh Knight is an electrician who works and lives in Wodonga. He is currently the president of the Wodonga branch of the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. Josh is also a passionate sporting shooter and the vice president of the Victorian Sporting Shooters Association Australia, which is the peak advocacy group for the sporting shooters in Australia. Welcome, Jeff and Josh.
Thanks for having me, Bill. I might just make a minor correction. I'm neither honourable, which most people will agree with, and I'm an MLC. They changed it a little while ago back in Victoria that you have to be a minister or a presiding officer, so us little minor backbenchers. I'm just a member of the Legislative Council.
It used to be long as you elected 2 terms, wasn't it?
Back in 2006, I suppose, they ripped a whole lot of that stuff off, and to be honest, it's twaddle. I don't think calling me honourable or anything like that makes me any better or worse. I'm not a political elite. I'm not a political animal. I'm in this because I thought I needed to do something. So that sort of stuff doesn't bother me in the slightest.
Well, just touching on that, both you and Josh, you are not factory-made politicians. Like when you look at a lot of the Liberal Party, Labor Party and that, they come out of university, they've already been in the activist field, they join a group or even get a job with a member of parliament, become part of the party machinery, and then work their way up to be a candidate. So they've had that sort of focus all their life and no worldly experience. And do you think that's something that sort of is obvious now in the political sphere, that there's so many manufactured politicians?
Oh, absolutely, Bill. One of the things I've noticed is if you want a friend in politics, get a dog, as some people say, but you do become friendly with some people. And I have noticed that the people I've become friendly with on both sides all have had lives other than politics. The ones that are the political hacks are the ones I struggle to deal with because that's all they know. The ones that I find that are better humans have lived outside the political sphere, and I honestly believe it shows in their attitude towards people and attitude towards the system. They're the ones that don't feel that they are entitled. They are the ones that are actually trying to do something. The rest of them on both sides are nothing more than drones feeding the machine.
And that's what sets us apart, Bill. I think as the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party is our candidates are real people. They're from the they're from the workforce. They've lived the life. They've usually joined because there's something that's they haven't liked about politics at the time. And if you want to change it, you have to change it from the inside, which is what most of us have come to understand. So that's what we're all about and what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
I think also dealing with politicians, I've dealt with a few going through, and you get the perception, even in some of the media, like you watch Sky News, you see politicians there that seem to be a bit more human type thing in those interviews and that, and not so arrogant. But when you actually meet them, the thing is, they've got this aura that you've got nothing to offer me. You don't know anything. We know all, and our political class know all. And do you find that's the situation with a lot of these sort of politicians that have sort of come up through that field in regards to, it doesn't matter what information or good information you got, it doesn't matter because they're already with the group of people who know everything anyway.
I find that now that I've been in 2 terms, 8 years, I don't have that problem anymore. But I can assure you, when I first turned up all those years ago, knowing zero about how this works, because there's no book called Being a Politician for Dummies, some of them were quite rude and arrogant. But on the other hand, the ones that I ended up being friendly with were the ones that would take you aside and say, hey, listen, this is the basics. Just do this, do that. Don't do this, don't do that. Be careful of this. And they're the ones that are okay. But the hardest ones I find are the political animals that get elected, and then on day one, they come in and start telling you how it all works. Now, I'm not overly arrogant. You've got to have a little bit of an ego to be in this job. But you get people, I've been there 4 years, which, you know, at the time when they get new people, the last election, and people that have been literally in there a week were telling me how to do it. And I just smile and go, yeah, no worries. And they're the ones that inevitably are just hacks. They will never amount to anything more than this, because this is where their path led them. And if they ever leave politics, they've got nothing.
Now, as the incumbent, you didn't, Jeff, you didn't have any problems with being the candidate again for the shooters, fishers and farmers. Josh, in regards to you becoming the candidate, was there a bit of a pre-selection or anything like that, or exactly how did your system work in regards to that you're the candidate, but you wouldn't be just the only one candidate? I'm sure you'd have a second person on your ticket, being the upper house, and 5 people are actually elected to each region. So it's a bit different than sort of just running for electorate.
Yeah, so Bill, I ran 4 years ago in Benambra in the lower house. So we'd never run in Benambra before, but we decided to run as a party. We decided to run a few lower house seats to see how we went, and I polled quite well in that. I think I got just less than 10%. So beat the Greens, which was the number 1 goal I had in the whole thing. So that worked out really well. It wasn't quite good enough to put any pressure on the incumbent there, but then obviously got more involved with it and started working towards it and talking to Jeff and Nicole and Ethan and other members of the party. You start doing a few more things, and they sort of suss you out as you go. And if you're a good character and good person, and you feel the same values that the party has, they encourage you along those lines. And yeah, so that's pretty much how you get your interview is time, not time served, but you know how you behave and how you act. We have done interviews for other candidates that came up in the areas. But I was sort of like did my time in that regard.
Do you actually have someone else on your ticket for the northern region?
Yeah, so I have another fellow on my ticket. So Peter Watkins is his name, and he'll be my second. He's another fellow who helped me out in the Benambra electorate, and we did a lot of running around together. And so he'll be my number 2 on the ticket. At the moment, we're hoping to get a few of us in on our number 1s at first, and then we'll worry about 2s a little bit later.
Yeah, I think you need roughly 16% of the vote or something to get a quota.
That's right.
Is that right? I was speaking to Tim Cooley last week.
Yeah, that's correct. The quota by itself, yes.
Yeah. In regards to the upper house election, I mean, Josh, your electorate's slightly bigger, but there again, not even comparable to some of our big electorates in Queensland out in the bush.
And the
thing is, you've got a 1 in 5 chance of winning anyway. So you know, it's not too bad, rather than just have to be first up in a lower house seat. with your main candidates out there, what's been the history for both the eastern region and the northern region in regards to it's always the Liberals easily get one quota, the Labor easily get one quota, and then after that it gets a bit iffy, or has it been a bit of a history where maybe the Liberals or the Labor have a historical get 2 quotas or something like that? Has the breakdown changed over the years?
Oh yes, it actually has. I'll take this one, Josh. First of all, the nature of voting for the major parties has drastically changed down here. In 2014, when I got in, there were 4 or 5 crossbenchers, and a lot of the Liberal and National were getting 2 quotas, or so close that when everyone else fell over, the preferential system meant that they got their 2 quotas. Labor did okay, but the whole paradigm has changed in that both major parties are starting to tank in their quotas, and that's going to all the minor parties, not just us. Obviously, there's quite a slew of minor parties, and we're finding that the Northern, for instance, the Liberals, well, the second one in the Liberals in the country areas is always a National, but the Nationals were getting elected. But the last one, they lost a National. They made 1 point something quotas and never managed to get over by the time the rest of the seats were filled. Labor did a little better in some of the country urban areas, but I think you'll find with this coming up election, particularly when we get down to the lockdown stuff, you'll guess why, that the Labor vote will shrink, but it's clearly not going to the Liberals, so it's going to the minor parties, and that's where I think it could be a very, very interesting outcome.
The other thing too is with the preferential system we've got, there is a need to be what you say, a little bit proactive in ensuring the flow of preferences and that, and it bodes well for those minor parties who can sit down and talk to each other and make sure they get the best result from the preference slowdown. Do you engage, will you be engaging with other minor parties in regards to preference flows and things like that, or is it just potluck sort of thing? Or do you have optional preference or preferential voting?
We do. We have
options.
We have kind of a hybrid. You can do, first of all, yes, we will be engaging with all the parties in some way or the other. Anyone that says they don't do deals with X party or Y party is sort of fooling themselves, because you have a number of, say, 1 to 40. You must put every single person, when you're doing your preference sheet to go to the Electoral Commission, every single person has to be on there somewhere. So, we always, at this stage, put the Animal Justice Party last. They weren't in the 2014 election, so we didn't have to worry about them. We always put them last. But should the numbers fall away there that it doesn't want, we'll get all the way down. If the Animal Justice Party is the last person standing, then that's how it is. But you can't not put them somewhere. It's it's a very strange thing. But I encourage all minor parties to stop thinking small and start thinking about working together, because that is the only way we can really do it. When you look at it, about 30 to 35% of the vote goes to minor parties. So in a really fair democratic sense, 30 to 35% of the upper house, at least, should go to minor parties. Now, it probably won't work out that way, but if it's close to that, then that's actually a fair outcome.
The other thing with the upper house too is it's a bit like a Melbourne Cup field in general. And actually, I also did a bit of research on the New South Wales elections and that in country regional seats and that. And they have a fairly big field of candidates even in the lower house. In Queensland, we don't seem to have that Melbourne Cup sweepstake type field. We even the seats around Cairns and Townsville and that, sometimes it's usually about 6 is about maximum, we don't have the sway of independence as well. Whereas in both New South Wales and Victoria, there seems to be a much bigger sway of independence in that field as well.
I think you'll find, and this is just conjecture, I think you find that as states, there is much more going on that a lot of the population don't like. I mean, looking at current, all the COVID stuff in both of the states, and in general, just the I don't know, battle between the parties is writ larger. I can't tell you why it's different in Queensland. That's only my guess. Is just that it's bigger dissatisfaction with the major parties. But I was born in Queensland, and I still don't understand Queenslanders. It's a funny thing.
Well, I wasn't even born there. I was come from West Australia, and so I've got no hope. But I live here. That's fine. In regards to.
I think it comes down to the fact you got a 1 in 5 chance of making it into the upper house. That's why we get all the people come in and break the big fields. Right? We're gamblers by heart in Australia, so that's we'll bet on 2 flies crawling up a wall. So got a good chance with 1 in 5 odds.
Well, the thing is, in your situation, Josh, you've got an idea. You already know who the current incumbents are. Tim Quilty is there for the Liberal Democrats. And you'd have a bit of an idea who you need to talk to in regards to when you're talking about preferences, and who probably not bothered to talk to. But overall, in the last, it's uniform, I think, across all states. And that in the last 10 odd years, or that is the primary vote of the 2 majors are consistently falling. We get situations especially in lower house seats where you can have the Labor people down to as low as 29 and the Liberals, maybe sitting at 35, 36. And then there's the swag of others. That really helps minor parties. But do you think it would even help us more if the minor parties could actually whittle themselves down to a few less?
For sure, and I think that's my personal feelings and conjecture is that those 2 parties are so similar now and chasing the same votes, which is why their votes are coming down to those sorts of levels, and why minor parties are becoming more popular. We're sort of offering the differences, and they're so slight in our differences between different minor parties that we certainly could sit down. My feelings are we could sit down and you could grow a whole nother party out of all of that. But then you'd need to represent it. And the biggest problem with anything is everyone wants to be top dog. And that's really what culls that sort of idea. But that's my feelings on it anyway.
In the northern region going into this election, what will you be focusing on? Because you're up there along the Murray. Water's always been an issue with the Murray, sharing it with New South Wales, and for different uses. And of course, now we've got the situation where the major thing about water is environmental flow, and that seems to be a primary issue of the major parties, and especially the Labor Party, is put more water down the drain. So is that going to be one of the things on your agenda? It's talking about the water issue? Certainly the water issue is the biggest thing. And actually I talked to Jeff about this earlier today, is that, 2 years ago, water was a huge issue because we had none. No one had any. Now, we've just about been rained out of the Elmore field days, and, there's water going everywhere. We're going to flood, the Dartmouth Dam is overflowing, first time in 26 years. Everything's chock-a-block. In actual fact, those environmental flows and the flows we're getting now are probably doing more environmental damage than anything else. But we haven't built any storages. We haven't done anything for so long. So yes, water is always going to be an issue. And we want to see fair and equitable use of that water for everybody, not just one end or the other. What about the Bourman choke? What's your position on that? Do you think it really needs to be, there's got to be a bit of an effort to dredge it and that, but do you think it really needs a massive sort of correction to that flow somewhere along the line.
For what they want to do, I believe that yes, there would need to be something bypassed. The constant flooding, I don't believe, is in the best interests of the Bourman forest or the area, and the actual water there, I think, actually causes more damage. That's my conjecture. That's my personal opinion. There's no science behind that, but and certainly the amount of water we have to pump down to get past that choke point, there certainly has to be a better way with irrigation channels or channels of some sort, but that has to be worked through, obviously, with landholders as well as other people. But it's about working smarter with the water as well, Bill. You know, we've got to do it all better.
But doesn't it sort of amaze you, these things get just stuck there for, I mean, the Bourman choke saga has been, you know, what, 10, 20 years in the in discussions, you know, we just don't seem to be able to resolve anything. And
once again, it's the same issue across the board with everything we talk about. It seems to be, once again, we talked about power, which is going to be another issue, I think, that we're going to face, everyone's going to face very shortly. You know, no point building anything because it'll take 10 years, 15 years to build it, but we need it in 5 years. Well, if we don't do anything, in 5 years' time, we'll still have to build something, and it'll take 20 years instead of the 10 years that we needed because we didn't start it for 5 more years. And this is what we end up doing. Let's get a 90% agreement on this is going to work, and then fine tune it afterwards as we go. So we need to get that agreement and work through from there. So, but you're right, it does take way too long to get this stuff sorted and get it right.
With the eastern region, Jeff, you run right out to the extreme, up to the Alps and that, where the timber industry was, and all the good national parks and state forests are. What's your some of the main things you'll be looking at in regards to your campaign?
Okay, one of the things, I've been out in Bairnsdale today at part of the timber industry and things like that discussing this. I am 100% opposed to the shutdown of the native timber industry here. It is absolutely illogical and just it's going to do irreparable damage to the area because, first of all, they only have access to 6% of loggable area. So that's basically of the state forests. I'm not opposed to national parks, of which about 1% is logged. And at the moment, it's probably way lower than that. So the environmentalists trying to tell us that this is for environmental reasons are fooling themselves, because what's happening is that they're shutting down a perfectly good, perfectly efficient and well-run sustainable industry. We're going to offshore it to places such as Southeast Asia and South America, who do just complete and utter clear fell logging, but they don't replant it, they don't remanage it or anything like that. And they will, everyone whinges about the Amazon being cut down, yet they're quite happy to have it cut down rather than cut down the trees in Victoria, that small amount that are allowed to be harvested, which are generally regrowth from around 1939 fires. I am completely and utterly on the side of the industry, and I really just do not understand, except for politics. I understand perfectly why, but I don't understand how they can fool themselves into thinking it's the right thing. Our industry is world class. Our industry is just, it's the study I've done, it's got to be one of the best, if not the best, and yet it's getting shut down. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, the other side of that too is withdrawing humans from the bush or from the natural environment. Now, I think that's the idea of some of these entrenched bureaucrats having this anti-human thought in regards to us being involved with nature. But the thing is, we provide a great service in regards to the management of the thing, access into it, fire protection and all those sort of things. Do you think things like the 2019 and 2020 fire season, are they going to, if we continue to withdraw and not be involved in forest management, we got to be revisited on more regular basis in regards to these types of fires.
Sadly, I think you're correct. We've got a very, very good and dedicated bunch of DELP, Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, or whatever they call themselves, firefighters. They are very good. They're a very small bunch. We have our volunteers with the CFA as well as the Fire Rescue Victoria. But what you don't see much of is that when these big campaign fires happen, is the logging industry will, when I say down tools, they will pick up all their heavy machinery and they will go to the bushfire areas and start helping. Now, once, on that alone, once they get rid of the industry, they're losing an invaluable resource, because no one's just going to park all these machines there waiting for 5, 10, 15 or 1 year or whatever the case may be and run in and do them. So I think the whole fire thing is going to become, it's going to become more, it's going to become quite savage, and they're all going to blame climate change, and none of them are going to blame themselves for putting the whole lot in a position of making what is a bad thing a whole lot worse. I think the management of our public land in general, particularly national parks, is subpar. I know that our Parks Victoria are woefully underfunded for what they need to do, and making more land inaccessible and just leaving it there, it's just going to make the whole thing worse. I just despair that we're going to get something even worse than the, pick the 1939 or 1983 or not 2019 or 2009 fires. Because at some stage, there's going to be so much fuel, there's going to be so little ability to control it. They're just going to have to let half of it burn out. And I just despair at what toll that's going to take, human and environmental. It's
I think the other thing is that they tried their reasoning for keeping us out is to protect the wildlife and all this sort of thing in the natural environment. But we saw from the 2019-20 fires the devastation to wildlife. I mean, you would think they would wake up to that maybe not manage the forest and just let it become a big tinderbox isn't really good for the wildlife and or the flora as well.
Well, you can't stuff the genie back in the bottle. White Man has been here, quite some time now. We've brought some horrendously bad introduced species with us. The rabbits and the foxes and feral cats and things like that. Ignoring them is not going to fix it. If we just ignore all those things, it's just the environmental impact is going to be worse. You're going to have, using feral cats. I'm a cat person myself, but I'm a domestic cat person. If I'm out hunting and I'm in a place where I'm allowed to, if I see a feral cat, it's gone. They are killing machines. And if you just leave them there, they're just going to keep on eating all the little native birds and lizards and this and that. Rabbits, we saw what happened in the 30s when they got out of control. Foxes. It just blows my mind. They think they can just pull up stumps and go away, maybe sow some 1080 or something from helicopters every once in a while and call it a job done. It needs constant and ongoing fine management. And just locking it up and chucking away the key, all that's going to do is make everything worse, not better.
I think the other thing is we've got a federal Labor government now is talking about a 30% plan, or basically get 30% of the land locked up under national parks or protected areas. Now, the thing that worries me, they don't look after the assets they got that well already. Giving them more land to be responsible for, and I'm sure they will, won't give the money. They don't give the money it needs now. They won't give the money it needs in the future. It's only going to be left to go to rack and ruins, because while it's all well and good to say, oh, we're doing this for environment, but if you're not prepared to actually fund it, manage it, and put the rangers in and all the rest of the staff and all the programs to keep the feral animals under control and the noxious weeds, well, then you're just making a mess. You're not doing anything worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just virtue signaling to inner city voters, and it's creating a mess that sooner or later someone's going to have to fix. Now, whether the government of the day in the future decides to use helicopters and people with semi-auto rifles, which the average person can't have, or just drop bucket loads of 1080 like New Zealand, I don't know. but they can't just ignore it forever, because at some point in time, it is going to become an environmental catastrophe. And that's even if it doesn't burn. You can't leave the rabbits and the foxes and the cats and anything else. And there's introduced weeds like blackberries. You just can't leave them alone and unmanaged, because they don't go away. They can sit there in their little inner city towers congratulating themselves whilst watching National Geographic, whilst the whole place is getting destroyed by mismanagement. And that's what I fear is going to happen. They need to throw far more in the way of resources at what we've got before they even start thinking about putting any more in.
But don't think that's probably the problem in regards to in bygone eras, the people sort of having the most input into decisions were the people out in the field and the field officers who put in the recommendations and got a good plan in place. And the thing is, there were regional headquarters that did all this feeding in as well. But now it's just so centralised in, for Victoria, it's in Melbourne, for New South Wales, it's in Sydney, for Queensland, it's in Brisbane, by these bureaucrats who are just career bureaucrats, had a university education. Some of them may have, qualification in environment or something like that, but it's been gained in the university in the classroom. It's never been put to test in the field. And then we've got also a situation where the bureaucracy also gets infiltrated by an activist group. Like we've got people in Queensland, we've got a situation where we had the Chief of Staff for the Minister for Environment. It was Nick Heath. Now, he was the chairman of the World Wildlife Fund and also Conservation Australia and things like that. That's not a healthy situation to be in. Now, is that the similar sort of problem in Victoria, where you've got these really concentrated power centres that are basically not going to listen to anyone else?
In the case of our Environment Minister, she's actually got some quite good staff. Now, we may or may not agree on environmental stuff and things like that. At least, despite the fact that I'm trying to think of how to put this, despite the fact that basically whatever I seem to say doesn't get any traction, I do feel that I'm being listened to. But I think in this case, it's the department seems to be more of an issue. A minister heads a department, and how they deal with the minister and how the minister deals with them is key. I know some ministers run their departments and some departments run their ministers. And I think the issue is that some ministers will take what they are told on face value and run off and do it. Again, like using the timber industry, that as an example, which I don't believe was the Environment Minister's decision, as I understand it, but someone's decided that's a good idea. And despite all evidence, the contrary, has just run off and done it. And that's where the problem lies, is that critical thinking has just been removed. Objective thinking has been removed. Facts and figures have no place in politics, and that is just wrong. And that's how we end up with these things. Whether it's, I've seen some of the local people out in the more bigger regional areas are quite good from the department, but some of the people in the city areas are just inner city latte swilling greenies that are just trying to create their utopia, which will never exist.
We can
just moving on to another subject now. If we can talk about the experience of the lockdown and how you think that will play into the election, especially in the regional areas. In regional Queensland, initially we had basically with Brisbane coming up with a policy, one policy fits all, one rule fits all, which was quite ridiculous how vast we are. It's probably a little bit different for Victoria because you don't have the length and breadth of Queensland. But did you find that the arbitrary decisions being made in Melbourne sometimes shouldn't have been applied so much to the regions of that? And did the regions suffer, and have they got over the COVID economic scourge?
Absolutely, it was misapplied, particularly in the early days. The whole state was stopped. Now, there are parts of the state that never ended up having a COVID case, full stop, ever. I know Far East, and there's a couple of places out far west that just never had a COVID case. But unfortunately, in the early days, all those lockdowns were applied to them. So you would be in the middle of a small town of maybe 200 or 300 who you'd hardly see anyone anyway, and you were locked in your house. Now, that may, without getting into the justification for the whole lockdown stuff, that may or may not have been applicable in suburbia or in the inner city Melbourne. But when you're getting out to the place where people are living on quarter-acre blocks or half-acre blocks or acre blocks, after a while, it just starts becoming a little bit ridiculous. Now, it was a little bit more granular as time went on, and the lockdown started to become more just in Melbourne and the bigger cities. But for a while there, they had this ring of steel around Melbourne to separate the regions from Melbourne. And again, I won't get into whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. It sucked for everyone trying to get out or getting in. But the economic damage it did to the regions, it will be felt for, I won't say generations, but it'll be felt for decades. They are coming, the regions are rebounding, but there's still heaps of empty shops. There's still heaps of businesses that just couldn't survive. It's a tough life economically at any time. And then when you get this sort of thing pulled on you, you know, heaps of people suffered, and they will suffer. I mean, the emotional suffering that some people went through, let alone the financial suffering, will be felt for the rest of their lives. As I said, I mean, I'm not in a position to say if it was justified or not. At that stage, we weren't getting any of the information about why there was a lockdown or what data was being used. I can just tell you from experience, it just sucked royally, the whole thing.
What about up in your region, Josh? Because day trippers and weekend trippers to the regions are vital for your normal economy, you know, for your pie shops, your little restaurants. It makes a business, and especially things like a long weekend, that's like a boom time for a lot of regional small towns and that. I mean, once that stopped, that would have been devastating.
Yeah, so certainly, so for me in Wodonga and along the Murray River, where we border New South Wales, it was even worse. We had 2 states doing lockdowns at different times. So if the Victorian police weren't stopping you from going to New South Wales, the New South Wales police were stopping you from going the other way, or vice versa, or checking your IDs. And for me in my job, I was crossing the border up to 10 times a day and getting stopped. And the police are recognising you, saying, "Yeah, mate, no, you got your ticket, you're all good, keep going." But you still have to wait in the line for 25 minutes till you get to that point to be able to pass. So that really affected work and things like that, not to mind the fear factor of we're all going to die from this, you know, COVID situation. But, you know, so the anxiety with people and the friendships that were lost with people not wanting to get inoculation, the vaccination.
Vaccinated.
Yeah, and stuff like that. But certainly for our businesses, the number of businesses that closed along the border, I felt was certainly, you can see it more on the Victorian side than you can on the New South Wales side. There's certainly a lot more shops closed in Wodonga. Albury has lost a lot of shops as well. You know, pubs came close to closing down. The Dartmouth overflowing at the moment, it's a great thing. People are coming from everywhere, and that's revitalising things. The pluses and the minuses was that we got a lot of influx from when the lockdown sort of stopped for a period of time, of city people moving to the country regions because they could work from home, or they didn't want to be under that ring of steel. The problem that then happened is that we now have house prices that are not too dissimilar to Melbourne prices, which has priced our young people out because our wages are nowhere near what those levels are in the city, and we don't have those opportunities. So, you know, it's had pluses and minuses for regional areas, but certainly more on the negative side than the plus side as far as we go. And look, we're gradually recovering, I feel, but it is going to be a long, hard road. And going back to the election that's coming up in November, there certainly has to be more thought and infrastructure chucked into regional areas, west and north and east, because we have suffered the hardest, and our roads are shocking. Our health system is shocking, that couldn't cope with COVID, and we're not seeing that at the moment. We're seeing a little bit from the opposition, but we're not seeing a hell of a lot from that is really functional. So hopefully we get a few more of those things where there's some stimulus is coming in. The Commonwealth Games coming to regional Victoria would be really great to see it in regional areas, not part of that metropolitan ring as well. So there's a few places out there that have put in proposals to host those games to try and stimulate the economy, and hopefully that brings more stuff back. And if we can get that, the infrastructure that'll bring, the work that'll bring, and that'll sort of help overcome it a hell of a lot more than doing nothing. So yeah, that's what I feel for our region anyway. Sorry, Bill.
No worries. Jeff, just drawing on your experience as a police officer or in the police service, did you find were surprised how easy the police fell in step with the political demands of COVID in regards to the lockdown and some of the activities that went on in regards to arrests and sort of surveillance, of Facebook pages and things like that? Were you surprised by that, or you think that's just would be normal?
Well, you've got to remember, Bill, that the police are an arm of the government. They don't get the choice of what they, to a large degree, they don't get a choice of what they do and don't do. The choice is they can quit and do all sorts of things. But as the police is the enforcement arm of the government. So no one went through the abuse you get at the police academy, or got, I don't know what it's like now, to throw children off playground equipment. And I've talked to some police officers that were involved in that, and they are deeply unhappy with their job and probably won't last because they didn't want to do it, but they can't say no. It's just not possible. So I think people need to, well, when I say chuck the police a lifeline, they have to do what they have to do. There's a lot of things that I did in the police office when I was a police officer that I personally didn't have much issue with, but that wasn't the point. The law was the law. And if the law sucked, then you try and get the law changed, which is hence what I'm doing now. You only get it changed in politics. The police have to fall in. Now, the problem was not with the police. The problem was with the rules they were given to work with. And, the whole playground thing was just a disgrace. It was just, the whole thing was a disgrace, but they didn't have the option of saying, no, it doesn't work that way.
I think it sort of makes people wonder in the public sometimes in regards to, especially, and obviously they're saying it's not the individual police officers that they're doing basically what that's needed to be done and what they're directed to, but at the higher levels than that, it's sometimes a bit worrying, and they were sort of fairly enthusiastic about some things, whereas if you go back and look at the Black Lives Matter and the other sort of protests, they're sort of standoffish, and that's obviously the political direction. But that's fairly scary to ordinary people in regards to that can be two different. The same force has two different perspectives of people. This people don't touch. This people who are more law-abiding generally, we'll jump all over them.
I personally think the Black Lives Matter thing was poorly handled for that very reason. Either you apply the loving touch of the law to one, or if you're going to apply the loving touch of the law to one, you apply it to both. They let the whole Black Lives Matter thing happen, and they didn't let the anti-lockdown protests happen. Now, that comes at a much higher level than even the people on the scene, the people directing the scene. I don't think it was a good look. I think it could easily be construed as bias. But again, the guys on the street, the police doing the actual work, that's not their call. I remember years ago, a quick war story here. I went to the Fringe Festival we had in Melbourne in the 90s. And we were told not to do anything about drugs. Now, technically, no matter what your thoughts on drugs, they're hard drugs, they are illegal. But if we found someone, we were told not to do anything about it, a direction from above. So there's the world doesn't exist in a black and white thing. It's mostly grey with a black edge and a white edge. And the poor coppers out there doing the work are the ones that get the stick. not whoever made the decision. And we'll never know who made the decision.
So really, this is where the politicians and you know, the ones sort of trying to get into politics and that are not in that in that system already. Surely that's got to be one of your focus in regards to, well, we want to make sure when we get in that the law is applied evenly. So can that be part of the electoral campaign as well? That's sort of saying, well, we can't have this separation of standards for one sort of activity and another. Is that really up to the people who are running for politics to put that in their platform and try to have it addressed?
Well,
I mean, we can all. Sorry, Josh.
So that's across our whole stuff. It's equality and fairness. We're right across that with the use of water for farmers, for fishers, you know, for environmental flows. It's got to be fair and an equitable thing. The same with any law. It has to be fair and equal use. There's always going to be some conflict between different groups on different things. Obviously, at the moment, or with lockdowns and things like that, the government have had enough sway everywhere to get what they wanted done. So for me coming into politics, yes, I come in there wanting to be fair and equitable and to make things equal for everybody and just. You don't want to go in there and go, well, no, Black Lives Matter can't have a rally, you know, and an anti-lockdown can have a rally. You've got to either be, like Jeff said, you've got to do one or the other, and that's where that goes as far as running for politics. I don't think anyone would ever go in there saying, well, I'm going to be this way or that way. Certainly not from our perspective. It's fair and equitable and making sure we treat everybody equally.
Just moving on from COVID, because obviously there's got to be a lot of downside for a lot of people, you know, for another decade going through, either from financial loss or mental stress and things like that. But now we move out of COVID, we come to a situation in Victoria where we've suddenly got this situation where looks like there's trying to be a lockout from nature in our national parks and that, or very restricted access. Jeff, can you give us a bit of insight exactly what's going on regarding access to national parks and state forests? Because we're getting a little bit of information up here, like ridiculous situations where if you kick over a rock, you got to get fined $900. If you scale up a rock, an unimproved rock face, that's going to cost you $1,400, and basically it's a fairly punitive sort of system.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, Bill. The issue came up just before the last sitting week we had, and there was a lot of discussion about whether it was a beat up or not. So I took the opportunity to ask a question without notice, which is when I ask the minister directly and they're supposed to answer. And I gave them the opportunity to tell me how I was wrong. Now, we're a couple of weeks down the track and I still haven't heard anything. But if it is a beat up, then I need the government to tell us how. If it's not a beat up, I need to understand how they think that this is fair and just. Now, there was talk about actually needing a permit to go swimming in some places. I mean, for God's sake, you know, we talk about water being a natural right, but there, you know, even if you're in the middle of the high country and you find a nice little stream and you want to take a dip, well, as long as you don't take a backhoe with you and start dredging it out to build yourself a pool, I honestly don't think it's going to matter. But I'm still awaiting on the government telling me how it's a beat up, and I'm still encouraging them to answer me, because it is, if there's even a grain of truth to it, it's a really, really big worry.
I think the other problem is too, is unless you get sort of a handle on it, it goes under the radar this election, they get back in, and then they're full steam ahead, because all of a sudden they say, we've got a mandate, just like this current Labor federal government reckons it's got a mandate to do this and that, but it only got 35% of the primary vote, but it thinks it's got a mandate to do whatever it wants. So is that sort of ominous going into election, you can't call these things out or at least campaign on them a little bit?
Well, we are campaigning on it, but one of the things I'm also very careful about is being careful about what I say if I can't prove it, which is why I gave the government the opportunity to tell me how I was wrong. Because if it is wrong, I don't want to run around scaring people. If it's not wrong, then people need to know. And as the days drag on and I get nothing from the government, then I'm going to be left with no opportunity to show people why they are wrong, and it will become a big campaign issue. But I'm not one of those people that likes running around saying the sky's falling in just to grab votes. I try and be far more responsible from that, and I just want to make sure that the actual issue is real, and if it is real, then I want to get onto it, and I want to I'll do my best to stop it. Unfortunately, we've got the election coming up, and we're about to head into caretaker mode. So I don't know if caretaker mode stops them from doing this, but until the election is over, there is limited opportunity to do anything about it. So all I do is I hope I get back in, and I hope that we bring someone like Josh with us, or our Western candidate, or I'll take both of them, and try and become influential enough to try and bring some sanity back to this. Because there has been some strange decisions made as we've gone on that just seem to come and go quite quietly, and that's what I'm hoping this will be.
With the shooters, fishers and farmers, I mean, I know your constitution inside out. I mean, I've been talking to the people in New South Wales and in Queensland and that. But you basically got three objectives: is firearms, access to forests, and looking after the farmers, sort of thing. They're the core objectives in your constitution. New South Wales has been fairly successful in regards to getting hunting into state forests and that through the DPI. Is that something you would like to see in Victoria and that, or do you already have some sort of access as shooters and hunters?
I'm proud to say, Bill, we have the best public land hunting in this country. In state forests, as a rule, you can go deer hunting, unfortunately, you can go pig hunting in some of them too, because they're making their way down here. But you can shoot all sorts of things on public land. We still have a duck season, which is done primarily on public land. So our job is not actually about reintroducing it or introducing it, it's about protecting it. And duck hunting is constantly under threat from predominantly inner city or urban MPs. Unfortunately, from both sides of the aisle, some of the Liberals have vented their unhappiness. Now, these people are all living in places that, if they want to ban duck shooting in suburbia, knock themselves out. Just don't ban it in the regional areas where people actually do enjoy it, do eat their duck, and it's nice. It's a organic, free-range, harvested meat. So I don't understand the big deal with it, but on the whole, our public land hunting is, I believe, the best in the country.
Well, that's one thing satisfied. Do you still have the clash with the anti-duck lobby? I'm going back years. There was a guy called Levyson or something like that.
Laurie Levy.
Moral Levy used to go out and basically endanger people. Does that still go on, or is that backed off a fair bit?
Sadly, it's got worse. One of the things that particularly bothers me, and I had a go at fixing it, is with a shotgun, you're not meant to shoot at birds roughly more than 30 metres out to ensure a clean kill. They are allowing protesters to get within 10 metres of that same person with a loaded firearm. And if they get closer than 10 metres, it becomes a legal issue. But if it's 10 metres or 11 metres or something, they're allowed to stand there with their whistles and waves and stuff like that. Now, should the absolute worst happen and tragically someone gets hit, at 10 metres, they're not going to recover from that. And I can't believe that they wouldn't move it to at least 30 metres, which would satisfy that, if you can't shoot a duck at more than 30, or not supposed to shoot a duck at more than 30 metres, then for God's sake, at least put the person 30 metres out. But unfortunately, that didn't get any traction and got voted down.
Well, to me, it would be obvious, basically like a firing range. You basically clear everyone from the field. And the only people who are there are the people who are shooting. So to me, the logic would be if you've got a declared area for hunting, it doesn't matter whether it's ducks or bloody deer or something, and there should be notices out on all those sort of public issues, and then people who are not actually involved in that sort of activity are just banned from the area under penalty of some sort of fine. To me, it's logical, and it's a safety issue.
The tricky buggers, what they're doing now is they're going and getting their game license and then a shooter's license, which actually satisfies the law. Now, getting into the point of being closer than 10 meters or 10 meters in front of someone with a gun, that's just plain stupid. But one of the things I'm trying to work on is that getting a firearms license, you say that, and a game license, you're meant to say that you are intending to go hunting game. You're intending to go shooting. That's the whole point of a firearms license. Evading prosecution is not a genuine reason for getting a firearms license, and that's what these people are doing. So I have raised the issue in a wider sense, but I've heard nothing of late. But I actually believe that they could well be incorrectly holding firearms licenses. So I'm leaving that to the police. It's a much longer thing than just a little bit of politics, but they're more or less lying to get a shooter's license. Now, if I lied on my shooter's license, I'd be in all sorts of trouble. Just because they're doing what they feel is the right thing, then I can't see that as being a genuine and honest reason for doing that. And they should have all their licenses stripped from them, and they go back to being not allowed on the wetlands between when it's hunting time.
Yeah, well, that's obviously a complex issue, but the thing is, I understand if you own a firearm, you should be doing regular shooting at a range or something, or having use of it, and actually owning one. If you've got a firearms license and you're just an activist, you don't own the gun and you don't do the firing practice and all that, well, then to me, it's just common sense to take the license off them. And then if that was their plan, when they signed the application for the hunting license, should be like something like a statutory declaration, and you've made a false declaration, and that puts you in a situation where you can be fined or jailed.
And this brings us, I mean, absolutely, but this brings us to the issue of governments trying not to make a decision. Basically, when I look at it, they're absolutely trying their hardest to ignore this whole issue and leaving it for the next government. Because to start doing that, the activists will start whining that they're being unfairly targeted and that the government's on the side of the hunters. If they start taking away duck hunting, then the hunters will be quite justifiably saying they're just giving in to these people that are just doing dangerous things. And if someone gets hurt because of the actions of the protesters, it's the hunters that are going to suffer. The hunters en masse, they're not going to just say, whoops, someone got badly hurt, we're going to kick the protesters off. They're just going to say, oh, well, we'll just stop hunting, job fixed. It's just, I really want them to fix the issue before someone gets hurt and before duck season becomes a casualty of the misdeed of these activists.
Okay, just moving on now, just to the shooters, fishers and farmers. I've been to your website for the Victorian website. I'm quite impressed in regards to the number of branches you've got. I mean, I've looked at the New South Wales website as well. They don't seem to, I don't know if they have branches per se, but it's quite interesting that your website, you've got, I think it's 10 odd branches altogether. And with each of those branches, you actually got a contact person or leader of those. So that's very interesting in regards to establishing grassroots in each well, not exactly each electorate, but at least in each sort of pockets of the regional areas, the major township. I think Victoria's shooters, fishers, farmers only been going for probably less than 10 years.
Yeah, 8 years. Well, 8 and a bit years ago, we got registered. We got registered 5 weeks before the 2014 election.
Okay.
So it was it was a whirlwind. You know, we got registered, then did all the stuff for the electioneering, and then I got registered, and then we had to learn how to do all this. But we've got the advantage of watching what the New South Wales and WA party have done over the years, and trying to copy what works for them and trying to not use what didn't work for them. So we are a grassroots party. We are most definitely, we appeal to a lot of, how should I put it? A small amount of a lot of the country. We have a lot of support in suburbia. We have a lot of support in the regions, and for a lot of different reasons. We've been very, very big on helping legitimate dog breeders through a bad time back in 2016. We helped the taxi industry through a bad time. We're not just about shooting, fishing and farming. We're about anyone that needs a hand. And I think that shows that we've got a very broad supporter base, and we have them, you know, in all sorts of areas.
Josh, because you're actually the president of the local branch in Wodonga, can you give us an idea of how regularly you meet and how many people sort of turn up, and how long ago it was founded? Because it's one of the failings of the shooters, fishers, farmers in Queensland that they've never got this growth in regards to having branches and things like that. So, and Jeff, you might weigh in on this too. How long did it take you to sort of get a number of branches up and running?
So for us, for Wodonga, we probably formed, similar to what Jeff said, probably about 4 and a bit years ago, just before the election. Sort of we started really activating and getting members together. We zone people into the area, so people that sign up to our party and stuff like that will get added into the membership. We try to meet 4 times a year. Now we meet more often once we come into election years and things like that. We tried doing camps and go hunting. Not everybody comes to those events. You usually try and get people together. Most times we have about 10 people for Wodonga that might come to those events and things like that. And then come on to election time, we may double that to get to 20 people. Our biggest problem is that volunteers are always hard to come, doesn't matter what organisation you are. And that's when we need people that feel same as us to come on board, and whether they're members of the party or just want to help, to come on board, help with the handing out on the how to votes. And if you've ever been to the pre-polling or to the election day, and you have a look how many Liberals and Labor guys, the union fellas are all there, or the Greens people are just everywhere handing out, and poor old shooters and fishers, there's usually one bloke if you're lucky, or just a billboard with a few how to vote cards hanging off it. So but we constantly try to grow. Every time we go to an event, we try to sign someone up. We're pretty happy when we get one person to sign up. We're happy when we get 10 people to sign up. We do better at different shows, and we certainly appeal more to anybody that's on the outdoors. And just going back to those fines and stuff like that, that has been a bit of a topic lately at some of these shows, and it certainly is noticeable, because we do appeal to everyone that does, whether you're doing bird watching, prospecting or mountaineering. You really want to be talking to shooters, fishers and farmers, because if those fines come through, we're the ones that are going to be defending you. So anybody that does outdoor activity. But I'll let Jeff finish off on the other side of a formation.
Yeah, well, probably getting onto the whole bit about volunteers is an important one. Most of our people are actually workers, and most of our people are have jobs, and it's very hard for them to be able to do this. So I'm finding that we do get different branches have different membership attendance for the meetings. Some of them are bigger than the others, but everyone's got a job. They're normally family people. We have a fair contingent of females and things like that. Everyone's got their own life, and it just gets difficult at times to interrupt real life for these sorts of things. But we have enough to get by, and that's what basically matters. We have enough to usually do pre-poll, even if it's not for as many days as we like. but we always have plenty on polling day. But that's where that we draw most of our volunteers through the branches.
Need to get those retirees, the younger retirees. I mean, they've got plenty of time on their hands if you can get them keen and interested. But of course, in New South Wales, Victoria, Western Australia, and that you've got the upper house, so you've had the ability to get into the upper house through. New South Wales is basically a different system altogether. It's just the whole state votes in the one pool. You're divided up into 8 different sections, and 5 in each. But it still gives you a chance to get into that upper house. The lower house is a bit more difficult. You actually have to win over the whole constituency, or a big portion of the constituency, and you've got to look in real terms with normal electorates. The makeup is a lot different in regards to, you're just not going to have that sheer volume of people who are interested in fishing, farming and shooting sort of thing. So you've got to have a bit more wider appeal. Of course, you'll pick up extras in regards to people who want to venture and sort of use national parks and the beaches and all those sort of things. But somewhere along the line, you also got to show that you encompass a lot more than that to get those voters. Now, in New South Wales, they were fortunate in regards to what I thought, in the fact that the Nationals vacated their normal constituency in 2016, especially with the greyhound misadventure and the amalgamation of councils, just provided that ability for someone to come along and fill the gap where the National supporters thought the Nationals were no longer looking after them. They had sort of got too entangled with the Sydney Liberals. So they picked up Orange in the 2016 election. That was successfully retained in the 2019, plus they picked up 2 additional seats, one in Bourman, which is the outer west north, and the Murray. So that's the sort of thing that can happen, provided the Nationals sort of don't do their job. In Victoria, do you see an opportunity like that coming along in the future, where there's seats or traditional seats held by the Nationals, and the perception is the Nationals are not there for the regional people anymore, and there's got to be an opportunity there in the future?
I absolutely 100% agree with you. Our biggest problem is that the coalition down here so rarely get into government. They don't have time for long-term stuff-ups. And what I mean by that is in 2010, they got in and they lasted 4 years, 1 term. So our biggest problem is that in this state is that the Labor government is the government of choice over the last few decades, except for a couple of minor times. Now, the Nationals are very they're still country focused here, but I've noticed they're starting to drift a little bit. We will never drift from being biased from the bush or for the bush, as they say in New South Wales. We will always keep our focus, because our name says it all. We didn't change. We're not taking shooters out of our names, because that would be a bowing into the political correctness of the world. We're not interested in political correctness. We're interested in doing what's right. And we will take any opportunity we can find to have a red hot go. We are now, after this election, assuming we're successful, we'll have people in for 2 and a bit terms. It will be time for us to step up a notch. We've proven ourselves, and I think in the 2026 election, we might have a couple of red hot goes at some seats, whether they're National seats or Liberal seats or Labor seats. But if there's an opportunity there, we're going to have a go.
Can you start identifying them sort of already through the historic level of voting characteristics in regards to the drop, where they were usually placed, and how that primary vote has dropped off for the normal party that's in those seats?
Well, up along the river, the Murray River will be our more likely things, which I guess identifies the Nationals mostly, but Mildura is held by an independent at the moment. But there's a rather large amount of dissatisfaction, but they don't have another option at the moment. But we will take anywhere that we think we can do well. We will never be an arm of either government. We get told all the time, well, you vote with the Labor Party, you vote with the Liberal Party or whatever. We vote on the legislation, and that's how it works, which means most of the time we end up voting with the government because they are the government. But if we don't like what they do, we won't vote for them. So if we found, I'm making it up here, an inner city seat where for somehow or other we resonated over a certain issue, we would go for it. I don't think that would ever happen. We're going to be a regional, more likely a regional area. But we have we've proven that we're not just a flash in the pan. We've proven that we're very consistent. We've proven that we're not wild and out of control and willing to work. And I think that will end up paying off. Just exactly where, I can't really tell you.
I suppose the other thing is really somehow, I mean, the media is so sort of biased anyway, but you always, like it or not, you still need some sort of media appeal, or at least getting them to at least take enough interest in you to get a comment on issues and things like that. And I suppose that's be something to look forward as a party grows. The fact that you get more members in the parliament, your comments are now notable and worthwhile seeking, and that gives you that much more gravitas in the overall political debate.
One of the things I don't think the media particularly enjoy about me is I won't make wild and stupid statements that they can feast upon. I mean, you look at my life experiences. I've been around and done some things. Not a lot of them have been glamorous. I mean, I've worked in a car wrecker and been a security guard and done all those sorts of things. I like to think of myself as careful and considered. And I'm not just going to say something just to feed the media to get a bite. I'm trying to get to see us seen as a really serious, bunch, basically a serious political party. Once people get past the shooters in our name, if they have a problem with it, they can normally see that we're environmentalists, in that we actually care about the environmental state. We don't actually just have a stupid ideology. I mean, no one wants to go hunting in a wasteland, but not looking after an area or just locking up and leaving it. That's not environmentalism. That's environmental vandalism. We are also big on animal welfare, just not animal rights. If you hunt, you should hunt. When you kill, you need to kill quickly and humanely, and that's one of our core sort of things. We're kind of what people don't expect from us, and that's because we're just being honest about ourselves, or honest to ourselves.
Okay, gentlemen, we've gone well over the hour. I'd just like to wrap up now in regards to let each of you tell us what your focus is as for the, it's only about 2 months to go, isn't it, for the election?
A bit less.
8 weeks down the track.
Yeah, it's the 20. Anyway, look, I'm going to say, look, from my perspective, I am fighting for the eastern Gippsland and the Latrobe Valley area mainly. With the timber industry is crucial to this area. If we can't save it, the ripple effect is going to be horrendous. The people that supply even to the point of supplying the pies and pasties at lunchtime, they're all going to feel it. The people that supply the fuel, the people that supply the ice, the people that send in someone to fix a broken window at the office of the timber people, they're all going to feel it. And I'm basically at that point where I think it's becoming a driving issue to try and save that. I think it's worth it. And if I were to say it, ironically, it's supposed to be what the Labor Party's about. It's about jobs. It's about keeping people able to pay their bills, so they can go hunting or fishing or start a farm or whatever they might want to do. But and it's also just about making sure that we're there to keep them honest. We have fought every single bit of anti-gun legislation that has come through. I've even tried to change some legislation. In fact, in the first term, I managed to change a tiny little bit, about advertising firearms online. But we're there for whoever needs them. And, you know, as I said, the Eastern region, if there was one big issue, it's got to be jobs.
Okay, Josh.
Oh, for me, it's the same thing. We want to get across to the public that, you know, we are there for them and we're in this for them. And we want to see, for me, in the northern regions, we've got so much that needs doing. The water needs doing. It needs to be sorted out now. We need the infrastructure and the roads done. We need health looked at. There's so much. It's got to fight for that regional areas. And we feel that we're the people to do it, because we've got both sides. We've got to defend the bush, and we've got to try and modernise at the same time, and keep our traditions at the same as well. So there's all these different things. We've got to work together, and we've got to overcome a lot of, as you said, media bias. We've got to overcome a lot of mistruths, half-truths and things like that, where people, you know, they'd rather throw mud. We'd rather just deal with the issues and show that we're honest people and we're just normal people like everybody else. So. Okay
then, gentlemen, if you could just stay on the line for a little bit and I'll have a chat offline, but I'll just wrap up now. If you've enjoyed tonight's show, please like and follow us on Facebook and subscribe. Also, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Next week, I hope to have Nick Josh on. He's the CEO of Bourman Coke and Coal, and we have an interesting conversation up here at the moment in regards to our coal industry and our royalty system. So join me next week. Thank you.